Which Week 14 totals are must bets? Welcome, football fans, grid, iron, gamblers, and all of my degenerates. It's Mitch here with my 4 favorite totals for Week 14. These are my favorite over-under picks for the week. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, and don't be a jabroni. Subscribe to the channel for more NFL picks and my opinion on the best bets every single week of the NFL season. Let's begin our over-under selections, and let me know in the comments whether you agree or you disagree. Let me know your opinion on my picks, and let me know your favorite over-under of the week. Let's kick it off with our first pick, which was probably the most difficult pick. I struggled to get to 5. There's only 4 in this video. There's only 14 games. So I have a solid 4. This would be the weakest of the bunch, in my opinion, just because of the inconsistency of the Atlanta Falcons. But allow me to break down my opinion on this game. I like the under 44.5 here. And the reason I like the under 44.5, no Drake London. Seattle is one of the elite run defenses in the NFL. Seattle is a great road team, and they travel well, and it's because of their defense led by Mike Macdonald. Ever since Mike Macdonald got there, this has been a great road team, and it's because of his side of the football, the defense. And run defense is crucial when you're on the road, right? Well, they're taking on Bijan Robinson. And in order to stop the Falcons, and especially the Kirk Cousins-led Falcons, you need to stop Bijan Robinson. I think that the Seahawks can do that. I'm not saying they'll shut him down, but I think they can do that, right? They are an elite run defense. They're second in rush yards allowed, and they are also top 5 in yards per attempt allowed on the ground. You look at success rate, you look at EPA, they're an elite run defense. They pretty much have 4 or 5 defensive tackles starting on their defensive line across the board. They also have a big-time linebacker in Ernest Jones, and their secondary is healthy. Julian Love is returning this week, which means they have their full secondary intact, ready to go and ready to rock against a Falcons offense without Drake London, one of the 10 best receivers in the NFL. Without London, the main guy is Kyle Pitts. And when you look at Seattle, Seattle is probably better equipped to take on Kyle Pitts than many other teams. Even if Pitts isn't some dynamic tight end, he did have a lot of volume from Kirk Cousins last week. And I look at the matchup with Nick Emenworry, the rookie safety of the Seattle Seahawks. He's pretty much the prototype for stopping a tight end and stopping one like Kyle Pitts, who's not known for his power or his strength, but more of his speed and athleticism. So this is a perfect matchup for Seattle to be able to guard probably the top option in the passing game for the Falcons. It's also Kirk Cousins, a pocket-centric quarterback, so Seattle's lack of speed on the front 7 I don't think really hurts them in a matchup against this player. He's not going to run, he's not going to scramble, and he's not going to buy time. If he's pressured, he's going down. So a lack of a run game that is designed as a zone run game. When you think about Mike Macdonald, why was he hired? He was hired to stop Sean McVay. He was hired to stop Kyle Shanahan. And those guys have primarily been zone runners as offensive coaches. So I think inherently Seattle is already well equipped to handle Bijan and the wide zone running game of the pistol-like offense from the Falcons. So many areas where I like Seattle's defense to be able to get to Kirk Cousins, be able to travel, play well on the road. They're healthy. And I do think after last week, they played sensational against Minnesota. No matter who the quarterback was, they shut them out. That's pretty impressive. I think that travels this week. And I think what we're going to continue to see from Seattle is they're becoming a defense-led team. They had their great sparks early on offensively, but this is a defensive team at its heart and soul, and that's why I think this continues with a healthy Seahawks defense. Now, when you look at Seattle's offense, Seattle has some questions to answer offensively. They're slipping. They're not playing as well. And now they face kind of a low-key tough task in the Falcons. Sam Darnold in fantasy football has been under 10 fantasy points 3 out of his last 4 games. Now, I know that's fantasy metrics, but that matters in scoring points. Under 10 fantasy points, which essentially means he's throwing 1 or less touchdowns per game on this last month or so of games, that's not good enough, right? Sam Darnold is not playing particularly well, and I think the Falcons have a defense that can really slow down some of the things Seattle loves to do. Atlanta, Raheem Morris, you look at Jeff Ulbrich. This is a defense that is familiar with the Shanahan scheme in particular. Morris grew up with it in Atlanta. He grew up with it in Tampa Bay. You know, you look at his lineage in the league where he was, Los Angeles with McVay, Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel in Atlanta. Matt LaFleur was in Atlanta, right? Like, he has a lot of crossover with these coaches. So Raheem Morris is pretty familiar with how to slow down the key fundamentals of this offensive scheme. And I think Raheem Morris will have his guys prepared. I love what Jeff Ulbrich has brought, another kind of disciple, I guess, of Robert Saleh, Kyle Shanahan, etc. But Jeff Ulbrich has brought sort of a more aggression to the defense, and they're blitz happy. And I think this is a good collaboration in Atlanta to be able to affect this particular offense. Seattle is an offense where they want to run the ball and they want to play action and they want to create big shots down the field. Atlanta is one of the best defenses at limiting explosive passes because they do have Jesse Bates, who is one of the best roaming free safeties in football. Second, they're very fast. They're a fast linebacking core, they're a fast front seven, and they're pretty fast in the back end as well, and they can make up ground in coverage. Also, okay, they can blitz really effectively, and Sam Darnold can be impacted by the blitz. Maybe they'll give up a play or two, but Sam Darnold can get a little shaky and a little seeing ghosts every once in a while if he sees Caden Ellis running straight into his lap, right? So the Falcons are a good blitzing team, even more so with Divine Diablo back. So you've got Diablo, you've got Ellis, you've got a dynamic linebacking core. Over the last couple of games, Diablo has returned. And you look at the run game of Seattle, the weakness of the Falcons has been their run defense. Well, Seattle is not running the ball well. They run the ball a lot, but it doesn't really result in a lot of traction. They're more so looking for the attempts to set up the explosives. They're not a great short passing team. And against Atlanta, you kind of need to be that a little bit. And also, you need to be able to run it. Well, Seattle is 26th in yards per attempt offensively. So there are layers upon layers in this game. You're fading Sam Darnold down the stretch, who didn't play well down the stretch last year, didn't play well recently down this stretch. Seattle is becoming better on defense and worse on offense. Atlanta is more of a defensive team without Michael Penix and Drake London. And Atlanta's at home, where they typically do play better on defense, like that Bills game. So Atlanta, Seattle, under 44.5 between two defensive head coaches. I will take the under. I think Falcons will struggle to score more than 17 points. And I think Seattle will hang on for dear life. I think they'll score in the, low 20s. I think in that range, like 23, 24 points, somewhere in that range. So Seattle, Atlanta is our first pick, under 44.5. Our second pick is going to be the Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders, under 40. Now, I prefer 40.5 because I do think that half point does matter a little bit, but I'll take the under 40. I think this one is, honestly, I'm surprised it's not lower, just because the first game was 10-7 in Denver. This game is in a dome and it's in Vegas, so that should help Vegas move the ball, and really both teams move the ball, but it's not like Denver really had any weather of any circumstance in that game. That being said, 10-7 was the last game that they played against each other. That's 17 points, okay? So we have a cushion of about 24 points, 23 points, right? 6 out of the last 9 games for the Denver Broncos have gone under 40.5 points. 6 out of the last 9. That's an extremely low-scoring team, okay? And that's a low-scoring overall output from both teams. Denver's defense is their strength, clearly not their offense, as you know. The Raiders do not score in general. 14 points, 10 points, 16 points, 0 points, 10 points, 6 points. That's their track record over the last 6 games outside of the Jacksonville game where they just randomly scored 29 points. If you take out the Jacksonville game, again, 14, 10, 16, 0, 10, 6. And one of the games, right, they played against Denver, they scored 7. So they don't score a lot, all right? Including a shutout. They were shut out by the Chiefs once upon a time. So, yeah, the Raiders are a terrible offense. Their offense consists basically of Brock Bowers and a little bit of Ashton Genty. Denver has been a very good running defense all year. They had some problems against Washington, but Washington is a very unique running scheme and also a much better offensive line and running scheme than the Raiders, so I don't expect that to be replicated by the Raiders. The biggest worry for me with the Raiders is their offensive line. Their offensive line is tragic, and when you look at Denver, they have clear mismatches across the board. We saw that in the first game where Geno was hit constantly, time after time after time, time after time after time. Like every third down, fourth down, it felt like he was sacked. So this is legitimately a game where if the Raiders were shut out, I wouldn't really be that surprised. You flip it on the other side, and the Las Vegas Raiders are a good run defense. They're third in yards per attempt against the run. They like to pack the box, and they like to make you throw explosives down the field and be patient throwing the ball. They also play a lot of Seattle scheme cover 3, and they play a lot of zone and or match schemes, which is more so what Bo Nix struggles with. Bo Nix is better against man because he can use his legs, and it's also easier for him to read the field and make a throw. He does have good arm strength and at times good accuracy at the second and third level, but Bo Nix, when he doesn't see it clearly, he panics and he plays very conservatively, and he knows he has an excellent defense. So if he's not reading the defense on this day, which he kind of hasn't been all year, I feel like Bo Nix will play this pretty conservatively. At the same time, Denver's not running the ball particularly well, especially without J.K. Dobbins, and the Raiders are very, very good against the run. So in order for Denver to have success, the best avenue for points in this entire game is the Broncos' passing game, which is not exactly one of the most potent in football. So if we're looking at it like Denver's defense has the edge in the pass game, Denver's defense has the edge in the run game, the Raiders' defense has the edge in the run game. The only real edge that might exist is the Broncos' passing game against the Raiders' secondary. But I don't even know if it's that big of an edge because you still got to block Max Crosby on the road. So I like the under 40 in this game. I feel pretty good about that one. Now, for the lone over in this video, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills. This is over 53.5. This one is, I think, a pretty public play, or will be a pretty obvious pick, but I think it's for all the right reasons. Just as we saw with Detroit and Dallas, that was a pretty obvious over, and I think this one is as well, just from the team profile perspectives, right? And in that Detroit and Dallas game, I kind of said I wouldn't bet this total just because it's so high. And this one is more like one that I would bet. Now, there could be snow in the forecast. I would caution you, if it's really bad snow, then maybe stay away from the total in this game. But it's going to be staying around here, 53. It might even lower if there is a little bit of snow in the forecast. But I honestly don't think snow is going to impact either offense significantly in this game, because snow oftentimes actually affects the defensive line, the footing of the defense, and I don't think it really affects the routes of the offense. The offense knows where they're going, right? The running backs know where they're going. The offensive line, if each team gets the ball out quick, which is going to be their kind of game plan, I feel like both teams can still move the ball even if there's a bit of snow. And now if it's ridiculous, that's where you have to kind of stay away. But when you look at the core of both teams, the Bills score almost 33 points per game at home, 32.5 points per game at home. That's already half the total taken care of, more than half the total taken care of. But that's against the average opponent, not against one of, if not the worst defense in football in the Cincinnati Bengals, who are basically bottom 3 across every metric in the passing and the running game. They allow a ton of points, they allow a ton of yards, they allow a ton of touchdowns, they allow everything. Okay? Also, they are the worst team against running backs in fantasy football. James Cook is going to feast once again. He had 144 rushing yards against Pittsburgh. Imagine what he could do against Cincinnati. So the Bills are going to have an approach to be able to run the ball with James Cook, and that's probably going to make the Bengals overcommit to that, which is going to create probably some over-aggression from the Bengals in the passing department, where Josh Allen is going to be able to make some plays against the blitz, down the field. He's going to be able to scramble and extend. And if the Bengals decide to only rush 4, well, the Bills' offensive line is going to be healthier this week than last week. They're back at home, where obviously there's no crowd advantage for the opponent or the defense. And Josh Allen's going to have all day because the Bengals have one of the worst pass rushes without Trey Hendrickson in the NFL. It might be the worst pass rush in football. So either way you slice it for the Bills, they'll be able to run the ball and control the clock. They'll be able to throw the ball. And if the Bengals do want to test them, which if I were the Bengals, I would be overly aggressive. I'd sell out to stop the run. I'd blitz the Bills. And I'd basically say, Bills receivers beat us down the field. That's what I would say. Okay, and I think if that does happen, the Bills are going to hit some explosives. The Bengals might get a couple stops in, just because of fluky nature of the game. They might get a sack. They might get a tip ball. They might force an incompletion, right? They're playing into the disadvantage of the Bills, which is their receiving core. But at the same time, Josh Allen's going to make miraculous plays, just as he did against Tampa Bay in a very similar setting against a defense that blitzes a lot and is overly aggressive and wants to stop the run. So I think that the Bills, either way, running the ball, throwing the ball, they're going to have success. And at home, they typically do 32.5 points per game. Now, when you look at the other side of the ball, I think Cincinnati will have success almost no matter what as well. The Bills' defense is decent. They are good against the pass through their passing yard metric and completions. They're first in completions allowed, meaning they're the best. They're also the best in passing yards allowed. But that's a big reason because of that is because half their games they're leading by a lot. And the other half of that actually doesn't make sense. Disregard that. But the biggest reason is because teams try to run the ball. I don't know what I was trying to say with they're leading by a lot. Maybe that's just like, I don't know, the game's already over. But to me, like, the Bills are really good when they can sell out and stop the pass. They are very good. But when the defense has any semblance of an idea that you're going to run it on them, that's when they get really scared. And that's when Sean McDermott gets really scared. And that's kind of the main point. You've seen opponents against the Bills this year that have had run-pass balance. Tampa Bay, New England, Atlanta. There's been quite a few teams. Miami is another one in both games, where if the Bills have to stop the run and they have to worry about the run, they are going to give up points and they're going to give up yards and they're going to give up explosives. Because when McDermott is able to just simply stop the pass, well, then they look great like they did against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs really at that point especially couldn't run the ball. But the Bengals have pass run balance. Obviously, they have the pass game. They have T. Higgins returning, Jamar Chase on the outside. You can't play man-to-man against them, and you kind of have to play too deep against them because you can't let Jamar Chase just run past you every play. So that's going to open up the box. And with Chase Brown playing the way he is, played great against the Ravens, has played really well against the Steelers, had a number of great games in a row. He's rushing for around 90, 100 yards per game, and they're running the ball really well with this offensive line. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Bengals ran the ball really well, and if they ran the ball more than you would think, because the Bills are so poor against the run. They are third last in rush EPA this season. They're one of the worst teams on average per play against the run. So the Bengals are going to have a balance of the run. And if the Bills are starting to have to overcompensate to that, that's what's going to open Jamar Chase for big plays, T. Higgins to big plays. And regardless, even if they just sit back and play their typical zone, Burrow is so smart and accurate that he will find the holes and he will find his big players down the field for big plays. So I just think it's a really tough matchup for the Bills defense. It might be one of the toughest matchups in the NFL for the Bills defense, especially if Joey Bosa and or some of these players on the defense are inactive, like Bernard is inactive. So I'm looking at this game and I'm expecting points from both sides. A little bit of a duel between Burrow and Allen. Burrow's playoff life is on the line. He'll bring it. Josh Allen, he doesn't want to lose at home, and they usually bring it at home. So I think this is going over 53.5. My expected score would be somewhere around 31-24, which would be about 55 points. So I'd expect something around that range. So that's my opinion on that game. Now, our fourth and final game is going to be the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs, which I like the under 41.5. The Texans are the best defense in football, as I've mentioned many times. They are first in points allowed. They are first in yards allowed. They are first in first downs allowed. But they are also first in points allowed on the road, only allowing 16 points per game. So that matters because the Chiefs are a very good home team. In particular, they're a very good home defense. Now, the reason why the Chiefs are not winning as much as usual is not because their defense doesn't perform at home. It's how their defense performs on the road. If I had to give one statistical reason why the Chiefs are not as good as last year, is because their defense doesn't travel well. They've given up points when they play on the road. Jacksonville, Dallas, etc. But at home, they only allow 14 points per game, which is actually the second best in the NFL, only behind the Packers, who allow 13 points per game. So the Chiefs are a very good home defense. They also have an interesting matchup this week against CJ Stroud and the Texans, a team that they brutalized in the divisional round last year. CJ Stroud was sacked 8 times in the divisional round last year against this Chiefs defense and Steve Spagnuolo's scheme. That being said, I think that the offensive line of the Texans is better, and I do think that the Texans' weaponry is deeper. But I still think that there's going to be opportunities for Spags to create pressure and get home on CJ Stroud, similar to the Seattle game, where the Texans really struggled with blitzes and really struggled to pick up stunts. I could see similarity between the Chiefs' game plans and the Seahawks' game plans. That being said, the Chiefs kind of have to blitz to get home because they don't have a great four-man pass rush. Last year, George Karlaftis dominated the game, and I don't think he'll quite do the same. He hasn't really shown up all year. I'd be surprised by that. But the Chiefs do have a very good home defense. It's going to be cold. It's going to be a weather that suits them. And I do think Spags' overall system inherently, I think, does a good job against Stroud. So I think it will be tough for the Texans to go on the road and score more than 21 points. And then on the other side, it's going to be a really difficult day for Patrick Mahomes. This is probably the toughest matchup that the Chiefs could possibly ask for on that side of the football. The Chiefs' offensive line is the main reason why. They're without their left tackle, who's now on IR. Their right tackle is doubtful, Jawan Taylor, and their right guard is also on IR and or doubtful. I'm not exactly sure, but Trey Smith is going to be out. He's going to be out again. Simmons is out, their first-round left tackle, and Jawan Taylor is out, meaning they have 2 backup tackles against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. The Texans may not have to even rush 4 players to get pressure in this game. They might be able to get away with 3. So if the Texans have 4 guys getting to the quarterback on regularity, it allows them to cover everything the Chiefs want to do. And this is just a formula that historically has a lot of success against great quarterbacks, but especially Patrick Mahomes. We've seen it in multiple Super Bowls against Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, where if you can get to him with a 4-man rush, that is the ultimate formula to foil Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And especially, it's a great way to kind of get rid of those explosives on those plays where he likes to scramble, because you already have 7 guys in coverage. You're not having to send that 5th guy to spy. You're not having to send 6 to get a blitz, right? So I look at this and I say, Anderson and Hunter are going to dominate this game. And the Chiefs are probably going to be without an extra option in the passing game. They're probably not going to have 5 in the route as much because they're going to have to block a tight end or chip a back very frequently because they're worried about the quick pressure that the Texans could bring. Texans are also a very smart blitzing team. On occasion, they will bring a blitz and it usually gets there. Like we saw against Josh Allen, 8 sacks on Josh Allen. Now imagine what they'll do to the Texans. The Texans will do to the Chiefs with their backup offensive line in. Okay? Also, Patrick Mahomes is struggling to throw the ball downfield. I don't think he'll create many explosives in this game at all. And against a defense like the Texans that flies to the football underneath, yak is going to be hard to come by. Absolutely. And I don't think the Chiefs will be able to run the ball either because of the offensive line injuries and because of the physicality of the Texans defense. I think this is a terrifying matchup for the Chiefs. The Chiefs last year against the Texans had 212 yards in the playoffs, 212, and 14 first downs. That is not a very good game. That game was also in Arrowhead, and they survived that game because their defense utterly dominated. But this is a better version of the defense that they played in the playoffs that they barely got a 200-yard game against. So it's going to be a really tough game. I think this is going to be an under. I actually think the Texans will win, but I think this is going to be like a 17-16 game. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be probably both teams flirting around 20 or high teens in this game. So I'm going to go under on Sunday Night Football. Thank you guys for watching. Those are my 4 favorite over-unders of Week 14. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, jabroni, and Gronk spike the like button. I'm Money Mitch. Good luck on your bets. Peace.